made a cursory glance at the list, but I didn't like prep anything too much because I figured a little bit more organic responses would be.
Welcome to Corran's Questions. I'm Kendall Hallman, also known as Corran on some corners of the internet. This is a show where I gathered a group of Star Wars CCG experts and asked them some of the big questions about how to get better at Star Wars CCG. The members of the panel have extensive Star Wars CCG resumes that I won't bore you with, but here are some quick credentials. Hayes Hunter has been a top player since the game was in print when he wrote for theforce.net. He's won a number of majors, including the 2023 World Championship. Scott Lingrell was a playtester in the Decipher days and is the lead advocate for the Players Committee. Charlie Arlinson came up out of Mark Walseth's after-school program, has 8 post-reset top 8s, and always kicks my butt at majors. Bill Kafer is on the PC's design team and is someone I have always looked to for deck building advice. Robbie Hendon has been playing since the dawn of time, and even though I disagree with almost every opinion he has about Star Wars media, he did make a top 8 at Worlds a few years ago, so we should probably listen to him. And finally, we've got Anthony Batmouse Howard, the Sheriff of Gemp, 2023 Worlds top 8, and my podcasting partner on Top 8 with Corran and Batmouse. This week we're talking about the elusive concept of tracking. It's one of the most unique things about Star Wars CCG. The ability to skillfully count cards and know the result of what would normally be a random draw. Is it something that separates top players from scrubs, or something that doesn't really matter? Let's see what everyone has to say.
That certainly assumes a lot about me, that I know how to track.
Big secret, I don't know how to track.
Back then, with Walseth, I learned from Walseth because he had a after-school activity. He was in 8th grade, and I think I started going in 7th grade. But tracking was not a thing we talked about ever because it really wasn't. It was such a high-level idea that we didn't really talk about it.
So there have been a few games in my entire career where I've tracked, and I've been so proud of myself because for me it's very difficult to try and do the numbers and say, okay, 15 is the card I need, and to continue to go through that. Now, I will say on GEMP it's a little bit easier, because if I know something happens and I have 8 in the reserve deck and the card I want is the second, I know I've got to go 9 down to get to it. In person, it's a lot more difficult, and I'll make mistakes a lot. Obviously, it's easy to just say it's the bottom card, but I'm not very good at tracking. And one of the things that I've always tried to do was make decks that allowed redrawing, or you play lots of high destinies, so your odds of getting a higher card are better.
I would call myself a moderate tracker. I'm pretty good at tracking, one card at a time, and it's usually, I lost this card and retrieved it. Very easy to find it in the stack. Count to 15 and remember 15 for 5 minutes type thing. I actually got a lot better at tracking once I started watching a lot of games on GEMP, just, having to either commentate or just, follow along. Just thinking about what I would do in those situations, I found myself tracking on GEMP both players' decks, right? Maybe not both at the same time, but both players' decks. It's a lot easier when there's numbers and it's a numbered pile, right? So that one says 14, so I know that 14 down, or if I can scroll up in the chat type thing. But yeah, so learning, it was basically one of those old deck tech articles that came out, when I was 17, and I read through it and I said, I can maybe do this. And I picked up bits and pieces here and there. Since then, I've picked up bits and pieces, right, where it's maybe I can track 2 or 3 cards, and it's like, okay, card, 2 cards, card, right?
So I was thinking about this for the last couple of days, and we had a cool article on Deck Tech 20 years ago. I mean, that kind of dates how long I've been playing the game, but it was, I think, made by Steve Marshall. I can't remember if that name's entirely correct, but I think his name was on the forums like Black Viper. But he wrote through and he described everything you needed to do how to track. And so I took his article, I read it, and I started following it. And one of the things he said to do was it's easier to track from the bottom up. So if the way you play your cards and recirculate, you'll play all your used interrupts, they go to the bottom. You know that the bottom is whatever cards you just played or X number of unknowns, and then the cards on top are what you drew for weapon destiny or battle destiny or something like that. And so it allows you to keep track of it with a smaller number than trying to count the top of your reserve deck all the way down, which could be in the you know tens, the teens, the 20s, the 30s even. And so you're just keeping track, okay, the bottom two are unknown, then I have a 5, a 4, or whatever you have. And so it made the numbers smaller in your head at first to then when you start getting into it and you do it more and more and more with practice, you can, kind of keep track of more and more at the same time. But you kind of have to, build your memory, do memory exercises with it.
I learned to track really just count from the bottom. It took me a long time to actually learn how to track it, to track well, and I still don't track perfectly, but I track better than I did when I very first started playing the game. At first, I started trying to just I'll just count down from the top. But really, for me, it was better just start tracking from the bottom. Like, oh, the 7 that I just drew is now 8 cards from the bottom. So now I just need to remember that I need to leave 8 cards in my reserve deck um, to have that 7 that I need for this Destiny draw coming up.
One thing that was suggested was to take a deck of playing cards and just start flipping them over whenever you find yourself with a dull moment, and flip some over and track them through the playing card deck as you would, you doing the Star Wars. So, you know, you start with that, and then you practice it, and you keep practicing it, and eventually it becomes kind of second nature.
All right. So learning to track for me happened almost 30 years ago. Back in the day, it was worthwhile to play your signal or you're out of commission and count the cards in your reserve deck, because if you didn't have something tracked, you probably weren't hitting a Darth Vader or high value target. So there was patience and reward for being able to remember a sequence of numbers, so that 2 turns or 3 turns from when you play your high destiny recyclable, you get the payoff. And of course, back then, smartphones weren't a thing. So, I think I had 40 different phone numbers memorized. Memorizing sequence of numbers was not uncommon. And to get better at that skill, though, because you obviously need to do it in real time very quickly, I used to actually practice with a 52 deck of cards. Memorize it, give myself 10 minutes, have the deck, memorize it, repeat it, make sure I get 100%, go down to 9 minutes, and so on. So it was a mental discipline for me. And, it stuck with me. So
Really, I discovered tracking going to tournaments, and I taught myself tracking by, well, I actually practicing it with 52 cards, because you don't always have Star Wars cards. So like sometimes when I was bored, I would just grab a deck of 52 cards and I would set it up similarly to how you would set up a Star Wars deck, and then put cards in my use pile, know what they are, and then count. So I always count from the bottom. Like if you're tracking a 6, you just remember 6, and then every time you add cards to your use pile, you add to the 6. So if there's 20 cards in your use pile, add 26, and then you keep track of it and where it is in the reserve deck. And so then I would do it with more cards, And that's probably, I would say, like, just like playing games and experience wise, I've gotten better at from that, but that's one, I guess that's one technique I would use.
This day and age, it's a lot different. I think the better skill is looking at all of the numbers at once on a verifier or something, and being able to calculate odds. Because destiny is so high generally, it's you're more likely to hit than not. It's like a gaff when you draw a 1 or a 2 instead of the standard 4 or 5 or whatever. But no, I mean, that type of mental acuity or whatever, that's something that anyone can do. I mean, like I said, just take a regular deck of cards, right? Don't get focused on anything special. Just run through it and practice it and get sharper that way.
But yeah, sometimes I just YOLO it and pretend I was tracking.
Well, I hope that was informative. Please do all the things you're supposed to do on YouTube: like, comment, subscribe, etc. The plan is for this to be a 10-episode series, and I have already recorded answers with the panel to all 10 questions, but feel free to post questions you'd like to see answered in the comments. And until next time, good luck, have fun, and no reverts. This week, we're talking about the elusive concept of tracking. It's one of the most unique things. This week we're talking about the elusive concept of tracking. It's one of the most unique things about Star Wars CCG.